So let me pick up where we left off in this thing is on page 550. What I would need for you to understand is if you look at the sum by row or the sum by column. This is over in page 551. Either if you sum it by row in this case, right, you have to figure out what the row is first of all. So if I ask you to sum a row in this case, if you look at the sum by row, it's the number. It's going to be one less than, right, of that row. Remember that because row starts out with element 0. And it counts backward with it as well. So make sure you sum it and the column with this thing. So I'm going to give you an array. The array size is 2-dimension with certain size with it, such as something that I could tell you is, for example, if I give you an int, beta, and a 2-dimensional array such as 5 and 4, for example, okay, like this. And I'm going to ask you, tell me what's the sum of the third row. All right. So what would you do? I mean, what's the proper way of coding? Anytime when you sum something up, one of the things you have to keep and realize is you're accumulating. Accumulating is what? Meaning that you have to initialize a certain value before you add to it. It has to have a base number to it, right? So assuming that this is your declaration in your array with this thing, inside of this thing, right, you have to actually to have a sum equal to 0, something like that on the line with this, and you have to write a for loop. In this for loop, I want to write this from the inside out so you can see what I'm talking about with this thing. So if you look at page bottom of page 550, all right. The example says I want you to sum, that's add to the concept as the row number 5. But let's say I want you to sum up the row. The row is row 4, for example. So row 4, right, is actually row what? It's one less, so it's row 3 actually, right? So if I did something like this, and you would actually I would ask you to sum up the fourth row. So you need, I'm going to do this from the inside out so you can see what I'm talking about, is take sum, and you're going to add that with sales, or in this case I haven't done the array yet. I don't know what my array is going to be, right? So what I need to do is declare an array. Let's call this thing beta, right? So in this case I have an array called beta, and I want to actually use if I want the sum of the the fourth row, so it's going to be what? So it's going to be one less, so it's going to be 3, right? Because it starts out with 0, and then I want to keep that as, I don't know, let's call this thing J for now. Okay, which means that I have to go in here and initialize. I need to initialize int as J. And I need to do what? And also initialize my sum as well. Okay, so both of those are integers at this time. I'm going to do 4 just to process this loop with a J. Since I could do int J in here one shot with it, I could with it, and then I have to test this thing through. What J is going to be what? Find the sum of a certain element. The outer loop is always going to be the row, right? In this case, J is going to be less than what? 5, right? And then I want to increment J. Okay, in this case with it. Inside of this loop, all right, if I really want to look at, here's the sum and the and what actually takes place in this thing, right? So if I ask you a certain number of row and column, make sure you know that. Please read. It's a similar problem like this. I modified it. It's sum by row. You can do the same thing by sum by column with it as well. Okay, so that's that problem with it. With it. I wrote. Let's see, 1, 2. I wrote another problem. If you look at page 541, page 451. Very, very, very similar problem in this one. what I'm looking for is the sum by columns. That's all that is about. So make sure you know how to do the sum by row for this one, and sum by, this is sum by column, and know the sum by row as well. Okay, so both, either way, depending on how you want to save this thing, right? Page 552, passing two-dimensional as a parameter as a function with this thing. Here's what I need for you to know. That second paragraph where it says, when storing two-dimensional array in a computer memory C++, memory C++ uses the row order form. That is, the first row is stored first, followed by the second row, followed by the third row, and so on with it. The whole key thing is when you call a function, you write a void function that when you write this thing, when you pass, you can pass the whole array in as a reference, as a reference variable with this thing. So what that actually happens is that it fills up the first row, the second row, and the third row. Very important. I need for you to know that. I'm going to ask you that in some way, somehow. So in some way that I'm going to word it, please know that second paragraph, page 552. 552. I misspelled this. This is page 552. Okay, I don't know why I got the 4 in there. No row order form. Okay, I'm going to ask you that little definition in there for me. Okay, so please know that. 557, last question that I ask you in here. If you look at this, you see the bottom of that. I'd like for you to know the n dimension. What's that definition, the n dimension array for me? Okay. Now these are things I hope you grasp, because before you move on to 1437, these are things that really would help you a lot with this when we get to before you get to data structure, program fundamentals 3. Okay, so I'm going to stop right now. This is all wrap up for chapter 8.